No, sorry, Mom, Mark doesn't want extra mouths to feed, Lisa said, closing the door while my house still smoldered 3 blocks away. The insurance adjuster handed me a check for $250,000 exactly 6 months later. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button. If you love real emotional stories, hit subscribe, we post one every day. It all began on a Tuesday in October when I woke to the acrid smell of smoke and sirens screaming down Oakwood Avenue. At 68, I'd lived in the same house for 32 years, the house where I raised Lisa as a single mother after her father ran off to Las Vegas with his secretary. The fire had started in the garage, some old Christmas lights had shorted out. By the time I stumbled outside in my bathrobe, clutching my purse and phone, half the house was already gone. I stood on Mrs. Caldwell's lawn, watching decades of memories disappear in orange flames that licked the sky. Everything's gone, I whispered to the paramedic draping a blanket around my shoulders. Everything. The Red Cross put me in a motel for 3 nights. 3 nights on scratchy sheets, staring at water-stained ceilings, wondering what came next. I called Lisa. Mom, oh my God, I heard about the fire, she said on the 4th ring. Are you okay? I'm alive, I said. But the house is a total loss. Insurance will come through eventually, but it could take months. Could I stay with you and Mark for a week or 2 while I figure things out? Silence. Then her voice, careful and distant. Mom, that's complicated. Mark's work is stressful, kids' schedules, the guest room's his office. I had learned early that Lisa was always good at finding reasons why family couldn't happen. I said quietly, I understand, sweetheart. I'll figure something out. The next morning, I showed up at their door, desperate and homeless, carrying everything I owned in a single suitcase. No, sorry, Mom. Mark doesn't want extra mouths to feed, she said, closing the door. Standing on their porch, in the same clothes I'd worn for 3 days, I felt something cold settle in my chest, something that only grew stronger. Every night I slept in my car. Every morning, I woke with a kinked neck. Every time I saw my reflection in a gas station mirror, I hardly recognized the woman staring back. That was 6 months ago. 6 months that changed who I thought I was, who my daughter really was, and what I could endure. The first night, I parked outside a 24-hour Walmart and cried until my eyes swelled shut. The second, I moved to a rest stop, telling myself it was temporary. By night 4, I'd established a routine that kept me alive but slowly crushed my spirit, up at sunrise, coffee at McDonald's, days at the library charging my phone and pretending to work, nights rotating parking lots to avoid notice. Insurance moved at a glacial pace. Every call brought new forms, new documentation, more reasons for delay. Autumn became winter, and the car went from uncomfortable to dangerous. I bought a sleeping bag, a small cooler, a camping pillow. The car was now my world, front seat to eat, back seat to sleep, trunk for what few possessions I still had. I learned which gas stations had clean bathrooms, which parking lots had cameras but absent security, which librarians would let me linger past closing if I looked busy enough. Lisa called once in those 6 months. Mom, I've been thinking about you. How's it going? Insurance through yet? I kept my voice neutral. Still waiting. Well, it'll work out soon. These things always do. Sophie made honor roll again. Ben scored his first soccer goal last weekend. I thought you'd want to know. Updates on my grandchildren, delivered like I was some distant relative. I said, that's wonderful. Tell them their grandmother is proud. Mom, you're strong. You'll figure it out. Always do. Strong? I wanted to laugh. If I was strong, why was I living in my car while my daughter thrived in a 4-bedroom house? If I was strong, why hadn't I demanded help instead of meekly accepting rejection? Still, I said, "Thank you, sweetheart. That means a lot." That night, parked behind a CVS, something shifted. Perhaps it was the cold, the aching back, or 6 months of humiliation. I stopped crying and began planning. Later that afternoon, the insurance adjuster called, claim approved. $250,000 would arrive within 10 business days. Enough to start over, enough to rent an apartment, buy furniture, rebuild a version of my old life. The first thing I did was rent a downtown studio and buy a real mattress. After 6 months in a car, it felt like luxury. But the apartment was just base camp. Days were spent at the county courthouse, learning property records and real estate law. I had driven past Lisa's house countless times during my car-dwelling months, sometimes parking at the end of Willowbrook Lane just to watch her life continue without me. What I discovered at the courthouse made my pulse quicken. Lisa's house, 847 Willowbrook Lane, was owned by something called the Harrington Family Trust. A little digging revealed that the Harrington Family Trust was now managed by a single person, George Harrington, 74, who had recently moved into an assisted living facility in Phoenix. His daughter, Caroline, had been handling his affairs since his dementia diagnosis 6 months earlier. I made a few calls. Caroline lived in California and wanted nothing to do with managing rental properties from 2,000 miles away. She was eager to sell her father's entire portfolio. "It's such a headache," she told me over the phone. "Dad owned 4 rental houses in your area. I'm drowning in maintenance calls and tenant complaints. I need to liquidate everything and focus on his medical care." "I understand completely," I said, sitting in my small downtown studio with property records spread across the kitchen table. "What would you consider a fair price for the portfolio?" The number she quoted was comfortably within my insurance settlement range. For houses, including 847 Willowbrook Lane, for $320,000. I could cover it with my settlement and a small loan, but I didn't want all 4. I only wanted one. "Would you consider selling them individually?" I asked. "I'm only interested in the Willowbrook Lane property." "Oh, that's my best rental," she said. "Great tenants, never late on rent. I'd hate to lose them, but if someone wants just that house, I could let it go for $90,000. They take really good care of it." Her description of the tenants made my pulse skip. They were talking about my daughter. "I'll take it," I said. "When can we close?" 3 weeks later, I was the proud owner of 847 Willowbrook Lane. Lisa had no idea her landlord had changed. Rent checks still went to the same P.O. box, deposited into the same account, only now, that account was mine. That first day, I sat in my car outside the house, watching Lisa pull in after picking up the kids from school. Ben ran straight to the backyard while Sophie helped carry grocery bags. Through the kitchen window, I saw Lisa moving through her comfortable routine, the life that had no room for her homeless mother. My phone rang. "Hi, Mom," Lisa said, distracted. "How are you? Did the insurance finally come through?" "Yes, sweetheart. It finally did. I'm doing much better now." "That's good. I knew you'd figure it out. Listen, I'm making spaghetti and meatballs, Ben's favorite, so I can't talk long, but wanted to check in." "That's very thoughtful," I said, watching her through the window. "I hope you're all well." "We're good. Mark got a promotion last month, so finances are looking up. Breathing room, you know." While I had been sleeping in a car, they had been celebrating promotions and financial ease. I said, "I'm happy for you," part of me genuinely glad my grandchildren had stability, but another part, hardened by 6 months of homelessness, was already calculating what came next. The lease on Willowbrook Lane expired in 2 months. Lisa had been paying $1,200 a month, about $300 below market value. A generous grandfatherly gesture, no doubt, but I wouldn't be so generous. I consulted 3 property management companies about fair rent for a 4-bedroom in Hillrest Estates. Consensus: $3,600 per month, slightly conservative for the neighborhood. I now had 2 options when the lease expired: offer renewal at market rate or find new tenants. Both felt like justice after 6 months in parking lots. I decided to give Lisa the same choice she had given me when I needed help. The official letter arrived from Harrington Property Management, the company I hired to manage communications. Professional, impersonal. Dear Mrs. Green, we hope this letter finds you well. We are writing to inform you that 847 Willowbrook Lane has been transferred to new ownership. All lease terms remain in effect until March 31st. You are offered the opportunity to renew your lease for another 12 months. However, the new market analysis determines the rent will adjust to $3,600 per month, effective April 1st. Please notify us by March 1st of your decision. If renewing, the new lease and first month's rent are due by March 15th. Sincerely, Harrington Property Management. I hand-delivered it on a Wednesday afternoon, slipping it into their mailbox, then drove around the corner to wait. My phone rang 18 minutes later. Mom, you will not believe this, Lisa said, voice tight with stress. Our landlord sold the house, and the new owner wants $3,600 a month. It's insane. Oh no, I said, voice carefully sympathetic. That's terrible, sweetheart. What will you do? I have no idea. Mark's crunching numbers, but there's no way we can afford that. We'll have to move, find a cheaper place, probably in a worse neighborhood. I made concerned noises while silently noting $3,600 wasn't quite triple their current rent, but I understood why it felt catastrophic. Have you tried talking to the new owner? I asked. We don't even know who it is. Everything goes through the management company now. They said, take it or leave it. I nodded inwardly. Sorry it had to happen this way, I thought. Sorry Lisa was stressed, sorry my grandchildren might need to switch schools, but not sorry enough to change my mind. Mom, can I ask you something? She said suddenly. You said your insurance money came through. How much did you get? Her timing caught me off guard. 6 months of homelessness, and she had never asked about my finances. Now, facing a crisis, she wanted to know what resources I had. Enough to get back on my feet, I said carefully. Maybe you could help with a down payment on a house. I know it's a lot, but we're family, and this rent situation is impossible. I sat in the car, staring at the house I now owned, listening to her ask for money she had never offered when I was living in parking lots. The irony was delicious. I'll think about it, I said finally. Let me see where I stand and get back to you. Thanks, Mom. I knew I could count on you. After she hung up, I poured a glass of wine in my studio apartment. Tomorrow, I would call Lisa with my answer. Tonight, I would savor the power to say yes, or no. She called 3 times the next day, leaving increasingly desperate voicemails. Mom, call me back. Please. We've been talking all night about this rent situation. I smiled, settled back in my chair, and let her wait. We really need to discuss options. Mom, where are you? Lisa's voice cracked with urgency. She'd driven to the address I'd given her, only to be told by the manager, "You're not in the system." Are you okay? Please call me back. For the first time in 6 months, Lisa was genuinely worried about me. It would have been touching if it weren't so revealing. I called her back from a coffee shop downtown, keeping my voice neutral. Hi, sweetheart. I got your messages. Everything okay? Mom, thank God. I was starting to panic. Where are you living? I had given her a fake address. After 6 months of careful independence, I wasn't ready to let her back in just because she needed something. I'm staying with a friend for now, looking for the right place, I said smoothly. You know how it is. I want something perfect, not just the first apartment I find. Okay. But Mom, about what we discussed yesterday, the down payment. Yes, I've been thinking about that, I said, hearing the hope in her voice, the desperation of someone grasping at a lifeline. I remembered that feeling vividly from my own months of struggle. I'm willing to help, I said, and I heard her sharp intake of breath. Oh, Mom, thank you. You don't know what this means to us. We've already started looking at houses in Brookfield, around $200,000. If you could help with $20,000 to $30,000 for the down payment. I interrupted. I have conditions. The line went quiet. What kind of conditions? First, I want to meet with you and Mark together. No more phone conversations. If I'm going to invest in your future, I want to see commitment from both of you. Of course, that makes sense. Second, full transparency. Income, debts, expenses, everything. I need to know you can manage the mortgage. Yes. Yes, we can do that. Third, I said, my voice colder, I want acknowledgement of what happened 6 months ago when I needed help. Another pause, longer this time. I'm not sure what you mean, Lisa said carefully. You know exactly what I mean, I said. When my house burned down, I asked for somewhere to stay. You turned me away. Mark didn't want extra mouths to feed. Remember? I spent 6 months sleeping in my car while you lived comfortably, worrying about kids' schedules and work stress. I washed my face in gas station bathrooms, trying to stay warm in a Honda Civic. I could hear her breathing, could practically feel her scrambling for words. I didn't know it was that bad, she said finally. You never told me. I thought you had an apartment or something. I should have asked. You're right, I said. You were dealing with your problems, Mark stressed at work, kids overwhelming you. And now, you've got financial breathing room, and suddenly you need my help. Mom, please. I know we made mistakes, but we're family. Can't we move past this? Family. That word landed exactly where it should. For 6 months, I'd clung to the idea that family meant obligation, care, support. Now I knew better. Family was conditional, subject to whims and convenience. Yes, I said. We can move past it, but first, understand this, when you need help, family should matter. When I needed help, it didn't. That's not fair. Fair? I laughed, bitterness spilling through my voice. Fair went out the window when you closed the door on me. But you're right, we are family. So I'm going to help you the same way you helped me. What does that mean? You'll figure it out, I said. You always do. You're strong. I hung up before she could respond, my hands shaking with adrenaline and a sense that bordered on satisfaction. 3 days passed before Lisa called again. Her voice was different now, less entitled, more careful, like someone finally aware of walking on thin ice. Mom, I think we need to start over. Mark and I have been talking. We know we hurt you. We were selfish when you needed us most, and there's no excuse for that. I was in my apartment, reviewing property reports on my rental houses. Yes, houses, plural. I had ended up buying George Harrington's entire portfolio after Caroline made me an offer I couldn't refuse. Monthly rental income now covered my expenses with extra for investments. I appreciate you saying that, I said. We want to make it right, Lisa continued. Would you consider having dinner with us tomorrow night? Just the 4 of us. I'll get a babysitter for the kids. We can talk honestly and figure out how to move forward as a family. I almost admired her strategy, getting me in their home, personalizing the appeal, making it emotional rather than abstract. It might have worked 6 months ago. I'll come to dinner, I said, but I choose the restaurant. Neutral ground. Okay. Whatever you prefer. I made reservations at Daniela's, an upscale Italian restaurant downtown. I arrived early and requested a quiet corner table for privacy. Lisa and Mark arrived exactly on time, both dressed more formally than I'd seen them in years. Mark even wore a tie, tugging at his collar nervously. "Mom," Lisa said, hugging me. "You look wonderful. I love your hair shorter like this." I had cut my hair and bought new clothes with my insurance money, subtle changes, enough to signal I was no longer the woman sleeping in her car. "Thank you, sweetheart. You both look nice. Please sit." The first half hour was pleasantly awkward, updates on Sophie and Ben, Mark's promotion, my deliberately vague living situation. Wine and appetizers made it feel like a normal family dinner. I let them settle into the illusion that it would be easy. "Mom," Mark said finally, "about your house fire. I want to take responsibility for what happened. The decision not to help was mine. I made a selfish choice, and I've regretted it every day." I noted the carefully practiced sincerity. They had likely rehearsed this. "I appreciate your honesty," I said. "It must have been hard to admit." Lisa continued. "We've learned a lot over the past 6 months about what matters, about how quickly life can change, and how important it is to care for those we love." "Yes," I agreed. "Life changes fast. I've certainly learned that." Mark leaned forward. "Barbara, we know we have no right to ask for help after what we did, but if you're willing, we'd be grateful for assistance with a down payment." "And if I can't help financially?" I asked. They exchanged glances. I could see the calculation in their eyes. "How honest should we be? How much do we reveal?" Lisa asked. "Then we'll figure something out, maybe find a cheaper rental, or Mark can look for a second job. We'll make it work. But we won't let money ruin our relationship again." "That's good to hear," I said. "Because I've decided not to help you with a down payment." Silence stretched across the line. Mark's face went carefully blank, and Lisa's eyes welled up. "I understand," she said finally. "I deserve that." "Do you?" I asked, letting the words hang. "Do you really understand what it means to need help and be turned away by the people who are supposed to care for you? To have nowhere to go and no one to turn to?" "No," she whispered. "I don't think I do." "You will," I said, finishing my wine. "Starting April 1st. "What happens April 1st? Mark asked, confused. I motioned for the waiter and took my time answering. These were the moments I had dreamed about during nights spent in parking lots, finally holding all the cards. "Your lease expires March 31st, I said casually. "I assume you've made arrangements for housing after that." "We're trying to work something out with the new landlord," Lisa said. "The rent increase is impossible, but maybe we can negotiate." "No," I said. "There will be no negotiation." "How do you know that?" Mark asked. I pulled out my phone and opened the property management app, turning the screen toward them. A photo of 847 Willowbrook Lane appeared with the caption, "Property Overview, Owner, Barbara Green." Lisa stared at the screen for a long moment before looking at me with a mixture of disbelief and awe. "You bought our house," she said. "I bought the house you're renting," I corrected. "There's a difference." Mark's face had gone pale. "When?" he asked. "About a month after you told me Mark didn't want extra mouths to feed." Lisa's voice was barely audible. "So, the rent increase." "Market rate," I said. $3,600 a month. Reasonable for a 4-bedroom colonial in your neighborhood. I had 3 property management companies confirm that price. The waiter brought our check. I paid in cash and left a generous tip. "I don't understand," Mark said. "If you have enough to buy properties, Why didn't you just rent an apartment 6 months ago instead of asking to stay with us? Because I thought family mattered more than money, I said. I thought wrong. Lisa was crying now, mascara streaking her cheeks. Mom, please. I know what we did was terrible, but making us homeless won't fix anything. The kids will have to change schools. We'll lose everything. You won't be homeless, I said. You'll figure it out. Remember, you're strong. You always do. I stood up, gathering my purse and coat. You have until March 31st to decide, pay market rate or find somewhere else to live. The choice is yours. What if we pay $3,600? Mark asked desperately. Would that be enough? Would you forgive us? I considered the question. Forgiveness isn't something you can rent. It's earned through actions, not payments. You had 6 months to show me what family meant. This is me showing what it means to me. You can't do this. Lisa said, standing. This is revenge, not justice. You're punishing innocent children for our mistakes. I'm not punishing anyone, I said calmly. I'm a landlord charging market rate for my property. If that feels like punishment, maybe consider why. I walked toward the exit, then turned back. Oh, and Lisa, if you decide to stay, I'll need first month, last month, and security deposit by March 15th, standard procedure for all tenants. I left them at the table, calculating $10,800 upfront plus $3,600 monthly. On Mark's salary, even with his promotion, it was impossible. Driving home, I felt something I hadn't in months, control. For 6 months, I'd been at the mercy of others, insurance agents, motel clerks, restaurant managers. Now the power was mine, and they were at my mercy. The local real estate market was brutal for renters, especially families with children and pets. I'd been tracking prices as part of my investment strategy. Lisa and Mark would find immediate availability only in rundown or overpriced places, or with landlords who preferred tenants without kids. By mid-February, Lisa called twice a week with updates. Each call more desperate than the last. Mom, we found a 3-bedroom in Brookfield, but they want first month, last month, and 2 months security deposit, $8,400 upfront. We don't have that kind of cash. That's unfortunate, I said, not mentioning I could cover it without touching my monthly budget. There's a place in Riverside, but it's next to a construction site. Sophie's allergic. Children are resilient, I said. She'll adapt. They looked at a duplex on Grant Street, a bad neighborhood. I don't feel safe letting the kids walk to school there. Perhaps you could drive them, I suggested. Every call followed the same pattern, their desperation, my practical but useless advice. They didn't see the obvious solution. One phone call could fix everything, authorize a rent reduction, let them stay at old rent, but I didn't call. I watched Willowbrook Lane from a distance. Boxes appeared, disappeared, cars loaded, unloaded. They were panicking. On February 28th, Lisa called with the proposition I'd been expecting. Mom, I need you to promise you'll at least consider this before saying no. I'm listening. What if we paid you back? Treated it like a loan. Let us stay at $1,200 a month and pay the difference, $24,000 with interest if you want. It was reasonable. Finally, she acknowledged the real relationship between landlord and estranged mother. How long would this loan last? I asked. A few years, maybe. Until Mark gets another promotion or the kids are older and I can work full-time again. We just need breathing room to get back on our feet. Breathing room, the same phrase she'd used 6 months ago when describing their financial comfort while I was homeless. Let me think about it, I said. Thanks, Mom. I know it's a big thing to ask, and it is. I reminded myself, especially given that Mark hadn't wanted extra mouths to feed 6 months ago. Mom, please, I'll give you my answer tomorrow, Lisa said. I hung up and settled into my apartment, spreading out my financial statements across the table. The rental properties were generating steady income well beyond my needs. My insurance settlement had been invested conservatively, growing quietly. I had more money now than ever before, enough to be generous to my only daughter. But generosity hadn't been Lisa's first instinct when I'd needed help. Family loyalty hadn't motivated her to open her door, not even temporarily. She had chosen comfort and convenience over me, without hesitation. And now she was asking me to prioritize their welfare over my own sense of justice. That night, I drafted 2 responses. One was forgiving, a generous yes that could mend our relationship and make me feel magnanimous. The other was honest, firm, unflinching, a reflection of all I'd learned in the last 6 months. In the morning, I chose honesty. Lisa, I've thought about your proposal, I said calmly. My answer is no. You and Mark will need to make other arrangements by March 31st. The silence on the line felt endless. Finally, Lisa spoke, her voice hollow. You're really going to let your own grandchildren become homeless? They won't be homeless any more than I was, I replied. You'll find a place for them, just like I did. Sleeping in parking lots isn't finding a place to live, Mom. It's surviving. Yes, I said. It is. And you're resourceful people. You'll survive, and then you'll rebuild, just like I did. This is insane, Mark said suddenly. Barbara, Lisa put him on speaker, this is Mark. I wanted to talk to you directly. Hello, Mark. What you're doing is cruel. Vindictive. You're destabilizing our children to punish us for the past. I'm not destabilizing anyone, I said. I'm running a rental business according to standard practices. If that feels vindictive, maybe ask yourself why family feels different when business rules apply to you. But you're not our landlord, Lisa said, voice breaking. You're our mother. Mothers don't evict their own children. Children don't abandon their parents either, I said. But here we are. So this is permanent? Mark asked. No matter what we do, apologize, or show remorse, you'll never forgive us. The question cut deeper than I expected. Was this permanent estrangement, or just boundaries finally being set? Forgiveness and consequences are not the same, I said. I can forgive your selfish choices while still requiring you to face the outcomes of those choices. What outcomes? Lisa demanded. We admitted we were wrong. We said we were sorry. Isn't that enough? What I want, I said, is for you to understand what it means to need help. Desperately need it, the way I did 6 months ago. To feel what it's like when the people who should care choose not to. And then what? Mark asked. Then maybe there's a foundation for a real relationship, I said. One based on understanding, not one-sided obligation. This is insane, Lisa said. You sound like a therapist, not my mother. I sound like someone who spent 6 months learning hard truths about family, I said. Call it crazy if you want. It won't change your lease expiration. I could hear them whispering, strategizing. Then Lisa softened her tone. Mom, what if we brought the kids to see you? Sophie's been asking about her grandmother. She misses you. I felt a pang. Emma and Ben had been absent since before the fire. They're welcome to visit anytime, I said. My connection with them isn't tied to where you live. But their stability is. That's your responsibility. If we're moving constantly, changing schools, how does that affect them? Mark pressed. You'll make those choices as their parents, I said. Just as you did when you decided Mark didn't want extra mouths to feed. That was different, he objected. No, I interrupted. It wasn't. Decisions affecting everyone, made by those with power, that's exactly what this is. The call ended abruptly. I sat alone, both empowered and uneasy. 30 days to decide their next move. 30 days to decide what kind of person I wanted to be. On March 15th, Lisa surprised me. She showed up at my apartment with Sophie and Ben, handmade cards clutched nervously. "Grandma." Sophie ran to hug me, while Ben hung back shyly. "I've missed you both," I said, kneeling to their level. We spent an hour catching up, school stories, friends, soccer goals. Lisa watched quietly, letting me reconnect with the kids without interference. "They don't know about the housing situation yet," she admitted. "We didn't want to worry them until we were certain." "Wise," I said. Mark had found a transfer opportunity in Portland. Same pay, lower cost of living, better schools. A fresh start, 800 miles away, far enough for independence, but far enough that visits would be occasional. "When would you leave?" I asked. "Next week. The company covers moving expenses, and we have family nearby," Lisa said. I watched the children, heads bent over a phone game. Daily presence replaced by screens and distance. "How do you feel about that?" I asked. "Relieved. Portland feels like a fresh start. No more rent stress. No guilt about what we did to you." "You've done well for yourselves," I said. "I keep wondering about October," Lisa said. "If we'd made different choices, how would things be now?" "Different choices create different consequences, not necessarily better ones," I said. 6 months ago, I believed family meant unconditional support. You believed it meant occasional obligation. Now we both know where we stand. "And where is that?" she asked. "Wherever we choose to stand," I said. Lisa called the kids over. "Time to say goodbye, Sophie, Ben." Hugs, promises to call, quiet heartbreak masked with cheer. At the door, Lisa turned. "Mom, I understand why you did this. I don't like it, but I understand." "Good," I said. "Understanding matters more than liking. Will you be okay? Living alone?" "I'll be fine. I always am." After they left, I looked at the drawings Sophie and Ben had made for me, stick figures labeled Grandma, Sophie, and Ben, under a sun and a house with flowers. Not Willowbrook Lane, but a home nonetheless. 2 weeks later, Lisa texted photos of their new Portland house, a bright blue colonial, big backyard, tires swing from an old oak tree. Kids smiling, already making friends. "We're settling in. Kids love school. Mark's job is going well. Thank you for pushing us to make this move. We needed it more than we realized." I stared at the message. She was thanking me for evicting them, crediting me with their better life. Emotional maturity or strategic manipulation? Probably both. I typed and deleted several responses before settling on, "I'm glad you're happy. Send more pictures when you can." 6 months after the fire, I owned 4 rental properties, had financial security, and had taught my daughter lessons about consequences and loyalty. But I'd lost daily access to my grandchildren, and any illusion that family could survive everything. Some victories cost more than defeats. Yet, as I sat in my apartment, a life built entirely through my own choices, I couldn't regret what had burned down. Sometimes, discovering your own strength requires everything to fall apart first.